Hey, everybody, this is Rue. Just a quick word before we start today's show. We have officially partnered with First Light Optics. So we do have a link in the show notes if you would like to make a purchase through First Light Optics to support the show. We are now an affiliate with them. So thank you so much for your support to all of our listeners in Europe. And let's get to the show. Clear skies. Welcome back to the Astrocast. I'm your host, Drew. Today is Tuesday, September 23rd, 2025. The new moon has arrived. Thank goodness for that. Certainly looking forward to this one. Did anyone happen to catch the Venus and crescent moon conjunction last week? Man, that was beautiful. What a sight to see. I didn't even know it was happening. I happened to be waking up early on Friday morning for something. I had to run an errand super early, and I just happened to walk out, and I look up, and there's Orion looking down at me, and then Venus and the crescent moon, and then Regulus was right beside it, and Leo, and it was just wow. It was quite the sight to see. So hope you've all been doing great. I've certainly been busy, as you might imagine. I apologize for last week not happening. Like I say, I did record the episode. I did one of our Under the Stars episodes, and I went to drag the WAV files over the next day. I use the wireless DJI mics when I have the outdoor episodes, and I don't know what happened, but the quality was just garbage. It was really bad. So I'm going to have to look into that. I got a little bit frustrated and just kind of set the mics down. So haven't bothered digging into them. The good news is those are relatively inexpensive microphones, and they're getting cheaper all the time. I've actually got an extra DJI Mini from this gimbal that I purchased before we went to Florida. But I have been imaging quite a bit lately. I've been very lucky to have some good clear skies. We had 3 nights in a row of really nice clear skies right at new moon. So I started working on a new project, and it's something I've wanted to do for a while now, but just haven't had the chance because the seasons are changing, obviously. So certain targets are finally coming back around. And, summertime was basically a bust for most of us in North America. We didn't really get too many opportunities to have good skies. And if we had a clear night, it wasn't necessarily, aligned with new moon. But one of the great things about being an astronomer in the fall is particularly in the northern hemisphere, same thing in the southern hemisphere when it rolls around, just different time of the year for you guys. But the season's changing, the cooler air comes in, and we tend to get a lot less clouds and rain showers and these types of things. And it's always one of my just favorite times of the year because Andromeda is back in the night sky. You've always got like a million new astronomers that snapped a photo with their smartphone, and they're posting and saying, "What is this I captured in my photo?" And it's always Andromeda. Orion has peaked back around. I know many of you have probably seen the Pleiades rising earlier and earlier in the evenings. And sure enough, Orion's coming up now. If you stay up late enough, I should say get up early enough, really, because it's still going to be, a month or two before he's coming up early enough to where you'd start imaging at the beginning of the night and then taking him on later. But, with those cooler conditions and overall better weather, we tend to get more nights of imaging. I don't know if that disappoints me that we don't get the cooler weather while the core of the Milky Way is out. But I suppose it just makes it that much more special when you do get one of those, really good nights during the summertime. But summertime is ending. We did do early on, we did an episode called The Seasons of Astronomy. And it was really one of my favorites to talk about, just because I love watching constellations come back around again. And whenever I first got into astronomy, I didn't understand how it all worked. And I didn't realize that you could only see, certain stars at certain, times of the year. Had I thought about it logically, I would have figured it out. But, I didn't, because it just never occurred to me to really think about it. I used to think it was crazy to even, be able to recognize one constellation. I would just look up and be like, yeah, it's a bunch of stars. But, now here we are 5, almost 6 years later into this hobby, and I can recognize the vast majority of the major constellations. And I love seeing them come back around. So yeah, Taurus, Aldebaran, obviously Orion, like we talked about, it brings a whole host of nebulae that have been, either not necessarily gone, but not in a great area for imaging. Obviously, we already talked about Andromeda. We've got the Rosette nebulas coming back around. The Pleiades is a great target for reflection nebula. Very, very bright one. And then obviously the Heart Nebula and Soul Nebula. And that has actually been the project that I've been working on. So the Heart Nebula has always been one of my favorites, as I'm sure it is yours. And to me, the Heart Nebula is a really, really good test of how much you're improving year over year as an astrophotographer. I can look back over the last 5 years of my images, and I always get at least one shot at the Heart Nebula each year. And you can see distinct changes and improvements from each year to the next when I look at that photo specifically. With something like Orion, I suppose you could say the same thing, but Orion's a little bit trickier because it's so bright that, really with just a single exposure, you can get a pretty darn good shot of Orion. I mean, I've seen plenty of, 1 3-minute exposure, heck, 1 60-second exposure of Orion that looks fantastic. But the Heart Nebula, it's a little bit deceptive because when you get that first sub that comes in, you can see the outline of the heart faintly, and you notice the cluster and the center, and some other very standoutish type things in the nebula. But the more time that you sink into it, the more faint details come out. Like I noticed there's a little, what I believe is like a doubly ionized oxygen patch at the kind of bottom left-hand side of the heart. If you're in the northern hemisphere, it's upside down, obviously. But if you were looking at it as a heart, right in the bottom left corner, there's a little blue area there that came up last time I was imaging it. So I teased on the last time we talked that I am reviewing a new filter. So sorry, didn't mean to bump the mic there. I've got friends over at Leviathan Optical, and we've been talking for quite a while, and they actually sent me over a review unit of their new filter. I was really excited to try it out because it's what they call a next generation light pollution filter. And it's great for a lot of different reasons. But for me in particular, living in Bortle 7 and nearly 8, light pollution is, a problem for me that I always have to deal with. And I love making dark sky trips, but the reality is I can't go on a dark sky trip, every time that we get clear skies outside, and I still want to be able to work, and having a good light pollution filter can make a huge difference. And up until now, I have been a big fan of the L Pro because I've gotten pretty good results with it, all things considered. And, it does the job. I own 2 L Pros. I own a 1 1/4 inch one that I've used successfully with my 294 and 585. And then I also have a clip-in one for my Canon R5 or R7, depending on what I feel like shooting. Actually, I don't know if it would go into the R7 because the R7's APS-C, but it is the same mount. It's an RF mount, and I think it's the mount that matters with those. I'll check on that later and let you know. But there are a couple of things about the L Pro that aren't great. Predominantly the halos that it gives off. So if you don't know, and you probably do, if you've ever used an L Pro or heck, most light pollution filters and oftentimes narrowband filters, it just depends. It can be a real problem, halos when you're imaging. And these are basically, really bright circles of light around the star that really shouldn't be there. But the stars are just so bright that it still comes through anyway. And you see this a lot with the really narrow band filters as well. I'm not going to sit here and go through which brands have halos and which ones don't. I don't see any value add in doing that. But you probably know that some are, more often associated with halos than others. So one of the first things that I noticed about this filter was I was not getting any halos, and that was really, really exciting. I noticed that on like the first sub that came through. So let me back up a little bit. So I got it in the mail, and it took quite a while to get it because he actually was shipping, I believe from Ireland, if I'm not mistaken, either that or the UK. Forgive me if you're listening and I got that wrong. But as you know, we've got issues with tariffs right now, et cetera, et cetera. And even though it was a clearly marked review unit, they still tried to charge me some god awful amount of money for the review unit just to come to me. I obviously am not going to pay to review a product. Most people who are kind of skeezy get paid to review products, but I'm not going to, pay to review a product. In any case, he worked with the carrier and managed to get it through. So I was super excited when it came through, but I was really, really busy. I had to wait a couple of weeks before I could actually use it. So I had the AM3 set up, which I've been using all the time. God, I love that mount. And I'm just going to say, like, harmonic drive mounts in general are just so great. They're so lightweight. And especially if you've got like one of the carbon fiber tripods that goes with it, or if you're like me and you have a Piers set up, it's so easy to work with, particularly if it's a lightweight rig that you're running. Like for me, I use the Askar SQA 55 on it predominantly. So I put my 294 MC Pro on the Askar SQA 55 on the AM3. And I have a filter drawer on that particular rig. I mean, I got filter drawers on all my rigs, but I went to go install this in my filter drawer, and I was actually really worried for a moment because it's the 2-inch mounted version, and it is a little bit thicker in terms of its, actual thickness than any of the other filters that I had. And when I went to go put it in, it actually wasn't going in, and I was like, oh no, because I was so looking forward to using this new filter. But I sat down and turned some better lights on and started kind of looking more closely. And I realized that I just didn't have a proper angle on it. So it does fit perfectly fine in my ZWO filter drawer. I also tested it in my SV Boney, my newer filter drawer, and it fits there as well. So that's good news. The filter itself, it comes nicely packaged, just like you would get something like an L Pro. It comes in its own, plastic carrying case with foam inserts. It's got a very nicely, I don't know if it's laser etching, how they do that, but it's got, Leviathan Spectral Pro written on the side of it. So you can easily tell which filter it is that you're dealing with. And yeah, it's the quality as far as the build is concerned is very good. So obviously this is a new company. It's a small company. So it's important that they really nail things like build quality because, it's an expensive filter. We'll get to the price later. I'm not going to lie to you guys. It is definitely a pricey filter, but they're not really aiming this filter at, people who just got into astrophotography and are paying $100 for, an SV Bony or a ZWO dual band filter. That's not who this is aimed at. This is aimed at like observatories or people who take their astrophotography very seriously that have already spent, thousands and thousands of dollars on their rigs. And, I would think that a lot of folks who use one-shot color, obviously one-shot color with a light pollution filter is generally what you'll see. Some of us don't like to go mono, and that's me right now. I get it, but after using this filter, I actually had somebody comment when I posted the photo, and they said, if you can get results like this with a one-shot color, why would you even bother messing with mono? And when you think about having to buy, entire sets of filters, LRGB, et cetera, and that's not even, talking about if you want to get like oxygen and all the others, HA. In any case, I'm rambling now. A lot of filters for one mono rig can easily add up to being a lot of money. And I probably don't need to tell you that if you have a mono rig. Another thing that this kind of sets it apart from other filters is that it's made for fast optical systems. So it'll work with your regular f5.6, doublet telescope like I have. But it can also work with up to f2 lenses. So if you've got a RASA, if you've got a Hyperstar, if you've got a Rokinon 135 or an f2 astrograph in general, it is designed to work with an f2 system. And that is a distinction that is worth mentioning because a lot of filters can't work at f2, or they will have lots of, really bad artifacts and what have you, halos, etc. Or they just won't work with an f2 system. I had issues originally with my Rokinon 135. And whenever I went to go buy my L Extreme, which was, I want to say close to $400. I know it was over $300 when I had to purchase it, or when I did purchase it. It was because the original L Pro that I had didn't work well with the Rokinon at f2. So overall, I'm just going to basically sum it up for you. It's phenomenal. So I imaged the Heart Nebula overnight, one night, which is something that I have done countless times with my L Pro. And I got results that are head and shoulders above what I was able to get with my L Pro. And I will post both my L Pro and my Leviathan Spectral Pro images of the Heart Nebula, and you can judge for yourself. Now, I will give the caveat that obviously I have gotten better at processing over the years, just like I talked about earlier in the episode. You get better and better each and every year. I don't have the time to, frankly, I don't have the skies to do individual subframe tests with each and every filter that I have. But I am happy to show, the final result of a 6-hour night with an L Pro and a 6-hour night with the Leviathan Spectral Pro. So I'll post both of those on the Facebook page if you'd like to check them out. And I think I will make the newer Heart Nebula photo the background for this episode. So if you're on like Spotify or what have you, you should be able to see it for the cover artwork. So yeah, it's pretty incredible. It has what they say is a measured and verified 98% transmission rate. and it maintains above 95% even at f2, which is very, very difficult to do. And I've seen some filters claim to have those kinds of numbers, but rarely can they actually prove it. Leviathan has actually done the lab work to back it up. I'm a results speak for themselves kind of guy, and man, oh man, I'm really blown away with how well it worked. So the rest of the project, before I send the filter back after my review's over, I'm going to also image the Soul Nebula, because what I'd like to do is a mosaic that combines both the heart and the soul. I've always wanted to do that. My mother has always wanted one of my prints, and I haven't found the right one to give her yet. And I think that is the right one to give her. So once I finish that up, I will be sending it back in. And like I say, no favors or money or anything like that changed hands. I just thought it was very nice of him to send me such a high quality piece that he clearly worked so very hard for as a small business owner, and let me review it. So big thank you to Leviathan Optical and James in particular, because he's the guy I've been talking with, and I'm pretty sure it's just his company. I don't think he has a whole lot of people involved. I'm sure he's got some people involved, but he's clearly put a lot of his blood, sweat, and tears into this project. And yeah, it's an awesome filter. So he's done a phenomenal job. I'll be curious to see what other people think of this particular filter. As far as pricing goes, it's a little bit crazy right now, because obviously a high-end filter is already expensive. But unfortunately, with the tariffs, the way that they are, the pricing's significantly more than it would otherwise be. So it basically, for US customers, it starts at $695 and goes all the way up to $998. Now, I will tell you that does include all of the tariff costs. So you're not going to like pay an extra, $400 when it shows up at your door for 50% tariffs or whatever the number is that's decided on the particular week that you may order it. And like I said before, I know that's a lot of money. It's not for everyone. This is not something that I'll be honest, I don't think the average astrophotographer will buy this. But if you're a person who loves one-shot color like I do, and you live in heavily light polluted areas and you want the best that you can get, this is the filter for you. So I think with that being said, it's a good value. So, things can be expensive and still be a good value. And I think that's definitely the case here. Now, could that price come down in the future? Yeah, of course it could. If the tariffs change, if he gets enough orders for the first batch, obviously that could lower production cost for the next, et cetera, et cetera. So if you are someone who is interested in things like this, I would highly, highly recommend that you check out their page. It's just leviathanoptical.com. If you go there, you'll be able to, find the filter and everything else. They actually have some other products that are really geared at, the more scientific side of the astronomy community. From what I was seeing, they have a desktop spectrometer, which is really cool. And then a 350 to 700 nanometer reconfigurable spectrometer as well. So definitely a really cool up and coming company. I can't wait to see what else they come out with. James, thank you again for sending this unit out to me for review. It really means a lot that you were the first person to send something over to me. So that's really special because, I've got partnerships with High Point and Agena and First Light Optics. We'll get to that later. But I haven't had a whole lot of people, throwing gear at me yet and saying, try this out and let me know what you think. So the actual image, though, of the Heart Nebula is really breathtaking. So in PixInsight, I ended up going with like a Hubble palette kind of feel with the golden to rust colored reds for the hydrogen alpha. And then I really tried to lean on the blue colors for the center of the Heart Nebula. The stars are just perfect. And that was one of the big differentiators for me because I had a lot of bad halos with my L Pro. I mean, really what I would do is I would shoot all of my either broadband or narrowband if I'm doing dual narrowband data. And then I would pull out my filter and pop in just a regular UV-IR cut filter and get 2 or 3 subs with just the stars at 3 minutes each. And then I would obviously separate those by doing a, star extraction and then layer them back on. But this saves me from having to do that because I don't have to worry about separating the stars because they actually came out perfect with the broadband filter. Another thing, and don't ask me how it works. Maybe I'll have James on the show to explain it to me one day. That's actually not a bad idea. Maybe we will do that soon, James. But it apparently is able to block the dominant LED and obviously sodium light pollution bands, which is really impressive. I know LEDs are getting worse and worse in all of our cities. And, LED being broadband light is really, really difficult to deal with. Don't ask me how they do it. It might be voodoo for all I know, but they definitely did it. And like I say, you can see it. I'll also, I'll post that photo in the show notes and I'll post it to the Astrocast Facebook page so you guys can check it out if you're interested. And let me know what you think. I actually got on the photo itself, there's this streak of hydrogen alpha that comes off the top right part of the heart. If you have it flipped right side up, obviously, to look like a heart. And I had never gotten that before on any of my images. So that was really cool because I'd faintly gotten it, but I didn't really get definition in it and really bring it out. And I was able to bring out everything in this image and with just 6 hours, which is crazy. Like, if I went Justin with this filter and put, 50 hours on it, I can't imagine what those results would be like. And again, I'm using a 294. So if you had like a 2600 MC Pro, you could even get even more impressive results. So highly recommend checking it out. Like I say, not for everyone, definitely expensive, but if you want like the best of the best for light pollution filters, I'm going to go ahead and say Leviathan's got it in spades. In other news, I've still been working on the C8 and I've learned a few things along the way. I've learned first and foremost that a ASI 120 millimeter mini is not the guide cam to use with the C8. That the sensor on it is just so insanely small that you can only see 2 or 3 stars in the image, and they very quickly move out of frame. Even when you have tracking on, that is just, it's way too zoomed in. I don't know what the crop factor is on something like a 120 mini, but it's got to be above 5x. And already imaging at 1200 millimeters, that brings you up to just a insurmountably high focal length, effective focal length, I should say. So I started looking into options for things that would work better without having to replace the off-axis guider that I purchased. So I bought the ZWO regular off-axis guider. They also offered a large model, and then Celestron also sells their own off-axis guider, which you can purchase. I found a really great video on YouTube that goes over guide scopes and their sensor sizes. And the guy actually uses detailed imaging to show you how much of the scope takes up how much of the sensor. And he basically lists all the popular OAGs along with all of the popular guide cameras that go with them. And what I found was the one that you actually want is the ASI 174 mini camera. It's got a significantly larger sensor than what the 120 does, and therefore it's just a lot more capable. I mean, you could just look at the sensor and tell that it's easily. It's a I never know how to pronounce this, but 1/1.2 inch filter. I don't know how you say that, 0.5. I don't know. But anyway, significantly larger sensor size than what the 120 has. But the only issue is it's $499 right now, which is, a really large amount of money for a guide camera. I also saw the ASI 220 Mini, which does have a larger sensor than the 120, but it's not hugely larger like the 174 is. I'd be curious to hear from any of you guys. Do any of you out there have a C8 with an off-axis guider, perhaps the ZW01? And if so, what kind of camera do you use for your guiding? Because, if I have to, I will spend that money on the 174. But if I could get something a little bit more affordable, obviously I would love to do that. With all the tariffs and everything, ZWO's pricing has already gone up, as we know. So, paying $500 for a guide camera is kind of a hard pill to swallow. But then again, nothing in astrophotography is cheap, as we know. So beyond that, I also I got the Bob's Knobs in the mail for collimation. I found a really great video that I think it was a Luca Matico video. I could be wrong, but I found a great video that goes over collimation. But it kind of left out a lot of the really practical details, I guess you could say, about collimation. And I think I had mentioned it on the show. And after I did, a friend of the show and member of the Patreon, Nathan, he actually wrote up a collimation guide for me and sent it my way. So I just wanted to send a shout out and a thank you to you, Nate. Thank you so much for doing that. It's incredibly helpful. I know you said you're still working on it. I would love to share it with the listeners of the show so they can also benefit from it. So I won't post it yet because I know that you said you're still working on it, but please let me know when you are done with it, and no rush, obviously, but when you are done, let me know and I'll mention it again on the show and make sure that I link it out so everybody can have a look, because it is a very well-written guide that really goes over the practical benefits. I think so many times I'll look up how to do something on astrophotography and just immediately jargon and theory and yada, yada, yada. And none of it's like practical, put this there and do that, which is really what I personally like. I like straightforward, easy to understand instructions. And I think, I don't know, we tend to live or be in a community that some people like to gatekeep with. And I personally don't appreciate that. It's not to say that I've never, said anything snooty myself about astrophotography. God knows I probably have. But I do my best to try to remember that not everybody knows every single thing about this hobby. I will say in our Discord, we have multiple members in there that are way more talented than me and know way more than I ever will about astrophotography. And I just really appreciate that, having them around to answer, the kind of questions that come up on a regular basis. And obviously I pitch in whenever I can as well with the little bit of knowledge that I have been able to retain. Now, one thing he did mention that I will share is he said to forget about using the CEM26 for trying to do, guiding, auto guiding, whatever you want to say, with the C8. And I kind of figured that was going to be the case, but I had it, obviously set up on the pier, and I had the metal plate already drilled for it and all these sorts of things. So I had hoped that I would be able to use the CEM26 because, if I was able to do that, I would just essentially leave the C8 on my pier, and then I could use that whenever I wanted to do a little bit of planetary work, or, if I wanted to, in galaxy season, really zoom in on something and have a look. And then I could use my AM3 right beside it on the ZWO tripod, or, who knows, maybe I'll pour another pier. and, have the two with, vastly different capabilities working hand in hand. That said, obviously, I can put the wide field refractor on the CEM-26 and it can handle it no problem. But that brings me to something else I've been thinking about. With this past summer and all the light pollution that we had, or not light pollution, I'm sorry, bad weather that we had, plus all the light pollution that we have here in Charlotte, behind our neighborhood right now, they're actually building this new mega development that really has no business going in this area of town, because literally within 10 minutes of my house, you can get to pretty much anything you would ever need. Be it entertainment, food, products, whatever it is that you need in Matthews, North Carolina, you can get to it in about 10 minutes. But whatever, they're building more office space and retail space, and then apartments as well in this area that is, pretty much right behind our neighborhood. And because of that, I am very, very worried that the light pollution is going to get significantly worse than it already is. And it's bad already. So I've been thinking about potentially sending one of my rigs down to a remote observatory. Now that I've got a few mounts that I'm able to use, I've got an AM3 CEM-26. Obviously, I've got the Move Shoot Move. I've got the GTI. I've got a Ioptron Skyguider Pro. I've got 5 mounts in total if you count the Move Shoot Move as a mount, and it is a mount. It's a tiny mount, but it's a mount. It can handle a camera. The main thing is I have the GTI that I can use for the refractor. I've got the AM3 that I can use for the CEM, or I'm sorry, not CEM-26, the C8. And then I've got the Move Shoot Move for my wide field stuff like Milky Way shots. So I was thinking I could potentially send one of those mounts, and I've been debating which one I would send. And I think I would have to research it a little bit, because I know in my heart that the AM3 would be the one that you would want to send down, because they're easy, they're reliable, et cetera, but I love the AM3, and I'd love to have that here with me, especially with the nice tripod that I have. I don't know if it would make sense to send the GTI down with the ASCAR SQA 55. I don't see any reason why I couldn't do it. I've certainly looked at some videos of starfront observatories down in Texas. They're probably, I guess you'd say, the most famous one. There are other observatories that you can ship your gear to, but they're the most affordable and most well-known, I would say, considering they just opened like their 20th building or something along those lines. And you see a lot of different mounts whenever you watch the most recent video that Bray put up. I believe his name's Bray. I watched it just the other day, and lots of non-harmonic drive mounts down there. So I don't think it would be out of the question to send something like the CM-26 or the GTI with a wide field refractor there. The benefits are obvious. You get, Bortle 1 skies. You've got the vast majority of the year is clear skies because of the area that it's in. The downside is, you lose a little piece of the soul of the astrophotography, in my opinion. But again, now that I'm several years into this hobby and I've got several telescopes and several mounts, I ask myself, would it be worth letting go of one of those rigs physically to be able to get that really great data on a very consistent basis? And I'm leaning towards yes, especially at $149 a month for the mini peer, which is all I would need for the ASCAR. That's definitely the rig that I would send down. Now, as far as which mount, I haven't decided that, but the scope would without a doubt be the ASCAR, just because it's the highest quality telescope that I have. And if you're going to be under Bortle One skies, you might as well have high quality. Now, there are other questions that I ask myself, like, what filter would I install on the rig? Would I just go full broadband? I mean, Bortle One skies, I figure I would probably just go broadband, but would I maybe want to occasionally do dual narrowband even under Bortle One skies? I would imagine if I had access to clear skies more than 300 nights a year or whatever it is down there, I'd probably want to do some dual narrowband stuff too. And I don't know. I mean, I suppose you could probably ask them to slide a filter drawer in for you, and they would do that for you. But little questions like that. I don't want to install a filter wheel on that rig just because it seems like overkill to me. But then again, if you're sending it down remotely, you're going to need to be able to take darks, and having a filter wheel with a dark cap in it can save you a lot of pain whenever you need to do that. And I also would need to figure out my flats situation. I was looking on their website, and they said, what is it? Astrodad is the company, I think. Anyway, they make flat caps for rigs, and those are pretty much the only ones they accept, if I read correctly. But a lot of people just do sky flats there, which is obviously something you can do because they always have the buildings open as long as the weather is okay. So it's definitely been on my mind. I think I'm going to do it, but I'm not 100% certain yet. I'd like to know if any of you guys have done it. Have any of you sent one of your rigs down to Texas under Bortle One skies? I think it would be an excellent road trip too, because I know a lot of people hand deliver their scopes for obvious reasons. I talked to Justin on the show a couple months back, and he had some damage during shipping when he shipped one of his scopes. Obviously, that's something that I would be terrified of. And more than likely, if I did decide to do this, I would take a few days off of work and drive it down myself. I realize Texas is a very, very far drive from Charlotte, North Carolina, but I'm always down for a nice road trip. So I'm sure I could make that work. But yeah, if any of you guys have actual experience with sending your scope down, please let me know. Send me an email at astrocast@gmail.com and tell me all about it. I would certainly be interested in hearing what your experience is. Are you getting a lot of data now? I hear some people say when they have access to a remote observatory under Bortle One skies that they end up with more data than they know what to do with, which I could definitely see being the case, especially, if you fully automate it, because obviously if I sent it down, I would not send it with an ASI error. So this is another thing that I've been pondering quite a bit lately. I think I'm going to go back to Nina because I don't know what it is, but I've had some weird issues with my ASI error lately. Like, for example, when I first got my AM3, I was regularly getting 0.3 and 0.4 guiding, and they took an update, and then it jumped up to over 1 on a pretty regular basis. Then it goes back down to 0.3, 0.4, and I'm like, what is going on? Because I always nail my polar alignment. And then, there's little issues like that. Obviously, the ASI error can be a little bit buggy. Nina being open source and it's been in development a lot longer. It just gives you more flexibility, particularly if you want to set up plans to run night after night after night. That's something that would be highly valuable in a situation like that. And if I were going to do that, I would need to get basically a mini PC that you remote into from your home computer. And they help you do all that, set it all up down at the remote observatory. And I realize I keep saying remote observatory. I'm talking about Starfront whenever I'm discussing this possibility, because I probably wouldn't be willing or able to spend more than $150 a month to rent a pier. I think they have excellent value. $150 a month is very good to get access to Bortle One skies year round. And I understand they got to the level of volume now that they were able to cut the price of their largest pier that you can rent in half. So that went from I think it was $800 a month to $399 a month. And that's for like your 96-inch swing zone, like mega size plane wave scopes and what have you. But for a smaller refractor, again, 149 is going to be more than enough for what I need to do, which is image wide field nebulae. So there is an additional charge if you want to do a piggyback, and it makes sense because it's a separate optical train. It's going to be taking up more resources, more energy, more bandwidth, etc. And if they have to troubleshoot it, there's more troubleshooting that has to be done. But overall, like, you really can't beat the value. If you've got a C star, they'll do it for $99 a month for the S30 or the S50. I couldn't imagine paying a monthly fee to send a smart telescope down to Portal 1 skies, but I don't know. That's not me. I've come around a little bit on them. I definitely appreciate, why people buy them now. I got to see one in action not too long ago, and obviously the image quality leaves something to be desired, in my opinion. And then there's a lot of mosaicing that you have to do with the S50, for example, but to each their own. But yeah, it's definitely something I'm thinking about, and I'll let you guys know if I decide to pull the trigger on that. If I do, it'll probably be in the coming months. I'd like to, get it down there before winter is out. And, honestly, if I did do that, that would give me a little bit more time to focus on the C8 and have more, hands-on work with that particular scope, especially with, galaxy season in the spring, which will be here before you know it. I definitely want to image some smaller galaxies and planetary nebulae and all that kind of good stuff. If you have an ASI 174 mini that's just laying around and you want to sell it to me for a very fair price, please hit me up on that. But now I'll be keeping my eyes peeled for a good deal on one. I know last year ZWO had a really good sale right before Christmas where they had like some ridiculous deals. I want to say the 2600 was going for like $999. It was almost a third off, if I remember correctly. So maybe I'll get lucky and get something like that. I'm not in a rush, so we'll see what happens. On another note, while I'm thinking about it, we had another new member join the Discord recently. I should say the Patreon recently, and then jumped into the Discord. I want to send a shout out and just a really big thank you to Edward Kaplan for joining up. Thank you so much, Edward. It means a lot to have you in there in the chat. We're always so busy in there every day now, all day long, just messages. And I love it. I love peeking in the morning. It's one of the first things I do is when I'm waking up and, rubbing the crust out of my eyes in the morning, I always pull up the Discord and check to see who's asked what and what have you. Also, shout out to Kelly. I saw that you got your guiding working and you had some really great images. You've come so far. I know that you still have a little bit to learn in terms of PixInsight, and we are going to get there. I'm sorry I haven't done it yet. I'm an extremely busy person who works a full-time job and does my absolute best to record this episode every week. So I'm sorry if I can't jump right to it, but we're definitely going to do that one evening soon. And we'll do a little tutorial session for how to learn PixInsight. So that will be coming as well. And if any of you guys are interested in, chatting with us or learning a thing or two or have questions about astrophotography and you're new to the hobby, please feel free to join up on the Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/the Astrocast. And I check that every single day, usually a couple times a day, just to make sure I haven't missed anyone. So generally, within a few hours, I will send you the link to the Discord. I think the longest I've gone recently was Edward. Actually, he messaged me the night before, right after I went to sleep, and I saw it the next morning and sent him the link right away. So if you'd like to join up with us, please do that. We would certainly love to have you. One other thing that's been in the astronomical news that you may have heard about is this new comet, the new Swan comet, which is 2025 R2 Swan. It was actually discovered not too long ago by an amateur who was flipping through images that Swan had captured. And it has been seen by quite a few amateurs in the southern hemisphere. But those of us in the northern hemisphere obviously have not been able to see it. So the comet made its perihelion, which is obviously the closest approach to the sun, on September 12th, which was just 10 days ago. And it is now approaching Earth. And in the northern hemisphere, we do have a chance to see this next month in October. So probably towards the later part of the month. Some estimates put it around October 21st. The brightness, though, I've seen some kind of different ranges, but the general consensus seems to put it around magnitude 6 or 7. So, depending on where that lands, if you're in perfect sky, well, not light polluted skies, magnitude 6.5 is generally about as much as the naked eye can see. And I believe it was at magnitude 7 before perihelion when it was observed in the southern hemisphere. So it may be visible to us in late October. It's definitely worth keeping an eye on. And mind you, even if it is a magnitude 6.5 or 7 and you can't see it with the naked eye, that doesn't mean it won't be a really cool object to image or check out with binoculars. If something isn't visible to the naked eye, a lot of times with binoculars, you can bring it right into view. I mean, I can see Andromeda from my incredibly light polluted skies with my Celestron binoculars. I love doing that, seeing if I can find the faint little fuzzy patch that is Andromeda from my Bortle 7 skies. And it is doable. So definitely worth keeping an eye on. Swan has made just so many discoveries over the years of different comets, and just yet another one that we hope will get brighter and brighter. But, realistically speaking, this probably, I'm just going to say it, it's not going to be a Neowise or even like C2023 A3 last year that we had in 2024. That actually just popped up on my memories the other day, the photo that I was able to get. Now, that was a pretty cool comet. It wasn't quite Neowise great, obviously, but it was naked eye visible. And anytime you can see a comet with a naked eye, there is something really special about that. So I wasn't able to go out to a Bortle 2 or 3, but I was able to go out to relatively dark skies, like a Bortle 5, and view that comet. And we were able to easily see it with the naked eye, the best night that we were able to see it. And the other nights, I was able to find it with binoculars, no problem. So definitely keep an eye out for that. If it comes and is high enough in the sky where I can image it, I would definitely love to get a photo of it. Comet photos are so cool in astrophotography, particularly when they're close enough where you can, get the tail and everything. That's really fun to do. I know that with C2023 A3, I got I got my best comet photos that I've ever gotten. I've photoed lots of comets that are, far away and are just green fuzzy specks basically on my astrophotography rig. But whenever I can get one with like a camera lens or even a tracked lens, like I used my 135 rig on the 2023 comet, and that came out really, really good. I think I did one with the 80 millimeter doublet as well. And that was like a really zoomed in view on it. And I didn't capture all of the tail, but I was able to frame it up in such a way where I got the vast majority of the comet. And that was really, really cool. So I'm hoping we'll be able to see it, even if it's a situation where we just see it with the binoculars, that would be super cool. We got some other stuff coming up. Obviously, the Leonids are going to happen in November, and you never know with Leonids. They can always pop off. I don't know when the next meteor storm is predicted to be with the Leonids. I'll have to look that up because I know that, I don't know if it's like every 20 years with the Leonids. I know that I saw them back in 2002 and it blew my mind when I saw that as a young man. So if I ever get a chance to see them like that again, I would certainly love to. But yeah, definitely keep your eyes peeled for that new comet and let me know if you're able to see it. All right, let me give a couple recommendations this week. I've got two for you. I'm going to get a little bit geeky with one of them, and then I'm going to go Stephen King with the other, as I often do. So, one of the books that I read, I want to say it was last year. It might have been 2 years ago. The Institute by Stephen King. It was a really, really good book. I really enjoyed it. Just a great story. Stephen King, in my opinion, is the ultimate storyteller. He's just very good at it. Sometimes he doesn't stick the landings. I agree with a good friend of mine on that. But the actual stories, when they're good, they're great. And The Institute was a really good story. So recently, MGM Plus, and sorry, I know no one has MGM Plus. They did a version of it. It's 8 episodes long. And me and Jess just finished watching it, and it was really, really good. So definitely would recommend that you give that a try, particularly if you read the book. I was talking to a buddy of mine who's also a big King fan, and we were talking about what would be great to make a movie into. And I was like, man, why haven't they done Billy Summers yet? Like, that would be a fantastic movie. If you've never read Billy Summers, it's a Stephen King novel about a hitman who basically has one last job to do. And it's a really great story too. And that's one that they could definitely make a great movie of. But if you do want to watch The Institute, if you're an Amazon Prime customer, as I know many people are, you can go on Amazon Prime Video, and it's an add-on for that. You pay like, $5 a month or whatever, but I think you can get a free trial for it for like 7 days. And then if you just want to binge watch the show, it's only 8 episodes. So you can watch it in a week if you watch one every night. Then you can get away without paying any extra to see it. So definitely would recommend that. The other recommendation is something that's been taking up a lot of my free time, what little I do have. It's going to be Hollow Knight Silk Song. So this is a Metroidvania game. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. But for those of you who do, you probably already know what Silk Song is. But Hollow Knight is a really great game that came out back in 2017, I believe. And shortly after, they announced DLC for one of the other characters that appeared in that game called Hornet. And it kept developing and developing. And eventually they said, you know what? This DLC has gotten out of control. We're just going to give Hornet her own game. And then we heard nothing for like another year. And then they said it's going to be called Hollow Knight Silk Song. And then we heard nothing again for like 5 years. Anyway, it took like 8 years of development. And a lot of people thought it was never going to come out. But it finally came out, and it's really, really good. I will say that the opening of the game is a bit tough. I was like, man, am I like stuck in this area? I felt like I was just running in circles for hours at a time, but stick it out after you get through that little opening section with the first few areas. It really opens up, and then you start having fun. You get lots of new moves and move sets and weapons and tools and all kinds of good stuff. And it's really just been a real pleasure to play. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm playing it on Switch too, because it's fun to be able to take it on the go or dock it and play it on my gorgeous 85-inch TV, which I always love to do. And it runs really well on Switch too as well. So I don't need to worry about, missing out on frame rates or anything like that. So if you haven't checked out Silk Song, I can definitely recommend it. So give that a try if you haven't already. And guys, I think that is just about going to do it for this week. I greatly appreciate you waiting it out for me. I know that last week was a little bit of a bust for us, and I do apologize for that. I do my absolute best to get this show out every week, but you know how it is. Life happens, and it happens to the best of us. But thank you so much for taking some time to listen to the Astrocast this week. I am your host, Rue. We will be back next week with another new episode. Until then, I hope that you have great weather, and I hope that you're able to enjoy at least a little bit of this new moon. I've been quite lucky and had several clear nights, and it looks like tonight might be clear too. So I'll be pulling out that AM3 and getting some more data on the heart and soul. So wish me luck with that. I will be back next week. Thank you so much for tuning into the Astrocast. And as always, clear skies.